We're defined as anti-Trump. You damn right. You damn right. We are anti-Trump. But we also have to spend the time letting voters know what we stand for.
A lot of them are with us on the issues. They're just not part of our coalition because they feel like they're not welcomed in it.
There's a condescension that is imputed to Democrats that I think we really need to deal with. So much of politics is not just how you make people feel, but how you make people feel about themselves.
So Democrats are weighing strategies to try to regain voter approval, especially among young men. Critics, though, say these tactics are simply a diversion as investigations expand into a possible cover-up of Joe Biden's health decline while he was president. Joining us now, Dr. Lauren Wright, a political scientist at Princeton University. Dr. Wright, let me put this question to you. There are going to be investigations in the Senate, as we just said, as well as in the House, into who knew what when regarding the president's health. If you were on one of those panels, what would you ask?
I would ask who knew what when, and specifically how early. Some of the reporting indicates Biden has been declining since 2021, and his staffers saw that firsthand. Yes, it's a Republican effort, but it's a serious, dangerous issue that deserves every bit of scrutiny from the Senate, from the House. It's one of the most dangerous lies ever told by government officials to the American public is Joe Biden's cognitive decline. I hope they do look into it.
We learned from the Robert Hur tapes that were released of his, White House counsel investigation. Joe Biden couldn't even remember what year his son died and what year he ran for president or won the presidency. The fact that this guy was in office and had the nuclear football trailing him around is really kind of scary. And it raises the question, who was really in charge? Who was really running the Oval Office?
Well, it's also antithetical to American democracy. And that's the message that Democrats campaigned on was Trump's a risk to democracy. The country is going to cease to exist, is what Joe Biden said, if Trump is elected. And all the while, they were undermining democracy in one of the most fundamental, basic ways by seemingly taking away Americans' right to elect their president. They didn't want unelected bureaucrats running the highest office in the land. And unless people can give evidence to the contrary, that seems to be what was happening. And it's very scary. It's very serious. And it deserves all of the scrutiny and the seriousness that investigations into Trump's 2020 election lies and January 6th deserves, if not even more.
But I can see a bunch of, top White House aides just going in front of Congress and saying, well, he seemed fine to me. Can they get away with that, do you think?
I mean, maybe they can, but the damage has been done. Luckily, Americans did elect a different person. And so Joe Biden's not going to be back in the picture anytime soon. And so in that way, democracy does hash itself out, because one of the biggest issues for voters heading into 2024 was Joe Biden's age. And some polls even showed that 70% of Democrats were worried about this issue. And so it worked itself out, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't look back to see how it happened.
Well, you're the political scientist, and doesn't this all go back to the fact that the, leading Democrats were afraid that Bernie Sanders was actually going to win their nomination back in 2016, and that, so they sort of propped up Joe Biden to make sure that somebody who was more palatable to mainstream Democrats won the election?
Well, Democrats do have a much more restrictive primary process, but I think the bigger issue for them right now is that they do have a problem with the truth. They staked out these very extreme policy positions, not just messaging issues, policy issues heading into 2024. And some of them are now saying they never even said these things, whether it's on gender identity or the economy or immigration or inflation. Just all of these things deserve an explanation. They either need to double down on those unpopular policy stances and explain what happened, or say that they were lying and that it was strategic. And part of that is how the Democratic primary process unfolded.
So, all of those people that Joe Biden pardoned, including his own son, Hunter, and a number of other people, Dr. Fauci, for instance, we don't even know if he made those decisions himself or if somebody, put the auto pen in front of him with a sheet of paper and said, here, push the button, Mr. President.
I mean, those pardoning decisions are extraordinarily controversial, and certainly Trump has made some too, and both are within their powers to do so. But yes, the problem is exactly what you just said, John, which is that every decision Joe Biden made at the beginning of his presidency all the way to the end now is going under a spotlight that is entirely appropriate.
We'll see if we get some answers from these congressional investigations. Dr. Lauren Wright, good to have you on. Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.